Hi everyone, a few weeks ago I posted a cover of Incubus Stellar, and in this video I will show you how to play each riff of the track. Throughout this tutorial I will highlight what pedals are being used and the settings they are set on so that you can get those tones at home too. If you don't have these pedals, I will suggest some alternatives along the way. So let's dive straight into it. So Stellar is in the key of A, and the very first chords really highlight this. We start on an A sus2 at the 9th fret, playing the open A string, 3rd finger on the D string and 4th finger on the G string, strike the open A and then the D string at the 9th fret before playing the D and G string together. It should sound like this. While the open A is still ringing, we then slide up to an A6 on the 11th fret with your 3rd and 4th fingers on the same strings. After the slide we had a fast bend to the notes before sliding down to an A major 7 on the 6th fret. I'm using 9-gauge strings, so if you have heavier strings this may feel harder for you. Now that whole sequence should sound like this. Once we get down to the 6th fret, the open A is still ringing out and your fingers are on the same strings. We bend the notes downwards again, but not quite as fast this time, so we have this. And the final part of the intro and verse riff is the single note part. This is using the A major scale to highlight the notes of the A major 7 chord we just played on the 6th fret, and it goes like this. And second time round it goes. Now if you know your major scale, you can see that this highlights the 3rd, the 7th, the 4th, and the root of the A major 7 chord. Adding the 4th is an interesting choice as this adds some tension to the riff as this note doesn't appear in a straight major 7 chord. But I don't want to get too bogged down in the theory of this, but it helps to know what you are playing and why this works within this riff. So using your first finger, we are up at the 4th fret on the A string, we play that twice. Then we come up with the 3rd finger onto the 6th fret of the D string, we play that twice. Then we come back to the 5th fret on the A string and play that once, and then up to the 6th fret again on the D once before sliding up to the root. So all together. Now the second time round you omit the 4th and the root of the chord and you highlight the 5th of the chord instead, which is this E note, but it's still focusing on the A major 7 chord using the A major scale. So those notes are starting on the 4th fret again, then up to the 6th on the D, and then you're playing that E note, the 5th of the chord of A, and then back to that major 7 note again. So it's playing all of those twice before you get back to that A major 7 note. So that first variation again, second variation. So all together, the complete intro and verse riff is like this. I'm using a very clean amp sound here and a fair amount of compression. This keeps the notes uniform and consistent in volume. The compressor helps quieten down any loud spikes and raises up any quieter notes so the riff sounds nice and even. I did this after recording in my DAW, but you could do this with a pedal too. Now let's move on to the pre-chorus. So after we play this single note riff, we immediately go into a big D power chord, which is the 4th of the A major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's D. So after this, we go straight into that big D power chord and we add some distortion. Now this sounds heavier because of the low 5th played above the root of the chord like this. Then from this D we slide down to a big B power chord down at the 2nd fret, which is the 2nd of the A major scale. So 1, 2. So you're keeping your fingers in exactly the same position here as you were on the D. just sliding it down to the 2nd fret. So altogether from the verse part we have this. Then from here we are straight into the chorus. Now the chorus utilizes an A power chord down at the 2nd fret and the previous single note riffs from the verse that are taken from the A major scale, which is still highlighting an A major 7 chord. So we play this. Now you can play the A power chord with 2 fingers like I was there, or you can play it barred like this. It's entirely, you know, what feels comfortable to you. Just if you're barring, make sure you don't play the B and high E string by accident. So you don't want this. You just want the A, the D and the G string to ring out, which is why I like kind of using 2 fingers, because I can use the pad of my 3rd finger just to mute the B string there. Now when playing the chorus, I still have a nice distorted sound, but on the single note parts, I'm using the Digitech Whammy V set 1 octave down. Now Mike uses the Boss OC2, and this pedal has 1 octave and 2 octave below settings. I believe he has the 2 octave side at about 7 o'clock or off effectively, and the 1 octave side level is about 2 o'clock, so just adding 1 octave down effect into his signal, so I'm replicating that with the whammy instead. Other pedals that could do this are the TC Nether, the Mooer Pure Octave and the Behringer Ultra Octave. These are all very affordable pedals that will do the same job. Now that with, if I can reach my whammy, my pedals are a little bit far away here. With the whammy it should sound like this, or the octave. So it just helps to really thicken up those single notes, and they sound huge. So if you don't have an octave pedal, it's not the end of the world, but it will just help really thicken up that sound just like the recording. Next we have a variation of the verse that still uses the open A plus the D and G strings starting on the 9th fret, which is the A sus2 chord again, but this time we play the open A and strike the whole chord and slide up to the A6 again at the 11th fret. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but quite simply it's just this. Now here I'm playing the open B and high E as well. I'm not sure if Mike does this or not, but it sounds good to me. You can just play the A, D and G strings if you prefer, so just... And once you've played the chord at the 11th fret, we go back to the 9th before sliding down to the A major 7 chord again at the 6th fret, so like this. After this you go into the verse like before, but starting on the 2nd variation of the single note part. So that would be starting with, so from this, pedal-wise for this part, I'm using a flanger and a decent amount of reverb. I turn the flanger on at the turnaround point before this verse variation. Before it comes out of the chorus with the heavy distortion on, when it goes to for the last time, usually that would be with the octave on, but that's when I switch the flanger on to get back to the clean section. So it would sound like this. So you can quickly switch back to clean, and then add the reverb after that. So you've got, so the flanger I'm using is the TC Electronic Vortex, and I'll put the settings on the screen now so you can see what that's set on. If you don't have a flanger, the Boss PH2 or the MXR Phase 90 will do a good job here. make sure you keep the rate around halfway or so, and it should sound close enough. For the reverb, I'm using the Electro Harmonix Holy Grail Nano. I have the dial at about 1 o'clock and it's set to the spring setting. There are tons of reverbs out there, and you could even use your amps reverb if it has it, or a plugin if you use amp sims. Now before we move on to the bridge, there is a variation at the end of the second chorus as well. Instead of playing the single notes after the A power chord, we play chords instead. Still following the same rhythm and root notes, we play this. So from the chorus, instead of or, you know, the other way around, we're still playing those same notes, but we're using them as chords instead. So you play the chorus, I think it's 4 times round, so 2 variations each. That would be with your octave pedal, and then after that you don't turn the octave pedal on again, and you're just playing, and then the second time. So what are we playing there? First, that is a C sharp power chord with the 5th above the root, to a G sharp power chord. We slide down to an E power chord, and finally back up to the G sharp again. This follows this single note part. Instead it's this. So as you can hear, you're playing the exact same thing, same rhythm, same amount of times. It's just as power chords instead of single notes. So then after playing the A chord again, we go to the C sharp to G sharp, but then up to a D with the 5th above the root, back to the G sharp, and finally finishing on an A power chord. Now that's quite a lot to take in, so here it is all through slowly. Ending on the A chord leads us nicely into the bridge. This stays on an A, but now we lift off our 3rd finger from the D string and we create an A sus4 chord that we play as an arpeggio. So on individual strings like this. So by lifting your 4th finger off this power chord, you're playing the 4th of the chord and not the root octave anymore. So here's the octave of the A. So by lifting that off, you're now playing a D note, the open D, which again, if you know your major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, D is the 4th of A, which makes that then an A sus4. So we play that arpeggio up and back down twice before sliding down to a G. Still using the same fingers, we play this. Now this makes a G power chord with the D note on the A string being the 5th of the chord, and this is doubled up below with the open D, as is the octave of G repeated here on the open G string. So here's a G, here's the 5th of the chord being the D, then we're repeating the 5th with the open D, and then we're repeating a high octave of a G with the open G. So that together makes a big G power chord. So we play through the arpeggio and then we sweep through all the strings ending on the open G, and we let that ring. So like this, and not a strum like this. You need to sweep your pick through and try and end it after you play that open G. Don't hit the open B. So those 2 parts together should sound like this. Next we play an E power chord up and down as an arpeggio twice before going to a G sus2 that then becomes a G6. So that section goes like this. So the whole bridge section all together goes like this. Now if you know your music theory again, a G shouldn't appear within the A major scale because this is the -7 or flat 7 interval, and this usually appears in a minor key, not a major one. So why does this work? Well, we can use this as a borrowed chord lent by another scale, such as the minor scale or the Mixolydian scale that uses the flat 7 interval. So if we borrow the flat 7 interval from the A minor scale, we get a G major, and that is why there are various G chords in the bridge and why they work in the context of the song. So if we play through an A minor scale, there's our flat 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that is a G note. So that's where we can borrow from the A minor scale to add into this chord progression and why this works and sounds interesting. Now again, don't worry too much about the theory, but it's good to understand why these chords fit together and why Mike's chord progressions always sound interesting. It's because of little bits like this that keep it fresh, so it's not just coming from the major scale. Now throughout the bridge I'm using the Boss PH2 Super Phaser, and I'll put the settings on screen now. As you can see, I'm using quite a slow rate, so if you had a phase 90 you could use this instead at a similar rate, or even try a flanger at a slow rate if you have that pedal instead and see what you prefer. So with the Super Phaser on, I kick that on right before at this part. So before I go back up to that A with the distorted part, I kick the Super Phaser on and then go back to the clean sound right for. Really comes to life with that Super Phaser on. But let's move on. Now to end, we kick on the distortion while playing that big G6 chord at the end of the bridge. Turn the phaser off and go back into the chorus riff like this. So with our phaser still on, we would be playing, and then we kick on the distortion. And then you're straight back into your chorus again. So after playing around this 4 times again, like you normally would with the octave on the single note parts, we finish on the chord version of the single note riff again. So the very end sounds like this. So you can see there, once you get up to that part, once you hit the variation that finishes on that A there, that goes up to the D and then back to the G sharp and to the A, you do that twice in a row and then finish on that big A sus2 chord. If this video has helped you, hit that like button, and if you want to watch another tutorial video, check out the one on screen now. Thanks for watching.